This is an addendum lesson to our study on church leadership, lesson 2, in a section that deals with handling criticism. I asked Brother Jerry Barber to do a lesson on this for us for this class because he has studied criticism for many years, and he will come at it in a way that maybe you've never seen or heard before. But realize that as preachers or as Christians, elders, deacons, whoever we are in the church, we're going to be criticized if we do anything. So we need to learn how to deal with criticism. And of course, we'll use the Bible to do that. I met Jerry Barber, I think, in 1991, been a good friend of mine for a long time, and I'm looking forward to your lesson today.
Thank you. Roger, I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate what these students are doing to improve leadership in the church throughout the world. This is certainly helpful. I want to talk today about criticism and tell you the two attitudes I've had toward it. When I was a young preacher, I was afraid of criticism. I didn't want criticism. I didn't know why anybody who worked as hard as I did would ever be criticized. And so I dodged it, and I got angry when people criticized me, and I pretty well let people know I didn't want to hear it. The lesson we're going to be doing today is a result of a long study that we had at a church where I preached a few years ago on the book of Proverbs. And I kept noticing over and over again about reproof, instruction, correction. And I just started noticing it, just jumped out at me. And then I took a week of study and read through the entire book of Proverbs again and highlighted a lot of those verses. And that's pretty well what we're going to be doing today. We want to start, I call it a Proverbs criticism sandwich. And so we take a slice of bread, the Word of God from the book of Psalms to begin with, and then the meat of it will be from the book of Proverbs. And then at the end, we'll take a slice of bread from Ecclesiastes as we look at this Proverbs criticism sandwich. The first scripture you see is from Psalm 139, verses 23 and 24. David says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxieties, and see if there's any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." Question: would that be a good prayer for us to pray? And my answer would be yes. And I pray this prayer often. God, come in and look around. Look at my heart. Know what bothers me. And if there's anything that needs helping, come in and I'll work with you and you work with me, and I want to straighten it up. Question: how would God answer that prayer? Up to this point in my life, I have never had my neighbors to complain when I have prayed that prayer out walking, saying, "Jerry, I wish you wouldn't walk so early in the morning because when God starts correcting you, it wakes me up." He's never spoken to me directly. So how's he going to do it? One way, I think, is be in the Bible, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. I think another way may be with people who criticize us. Criticize simply means to evaluate the pluses and the minuses, the advantages and disadvantages, and respond accordingly. Roger is a good friend, and he criticizes me a few times a year. He gets a blog post that I write, and when he sees a scripture that's wrong or a word that's wrong, or if there's a link that's not connected, he'll either call me or send me an email, and he said, "Jerry, you might want to check this out." And I say, "Thank you, Roger. You make me look a lot smarter than I am because I did the best I knew how, but you found a mistake that I made, and I can correct that before more people see it." So let's start out in the book of Proverbs. Proverbs 1, 23 to 31. This is a section in the book of Proverbs, in fact, the first 9 chapters, where we have a contest, we have a pulling. There is sweet sister wisdom who speaks. And then on the other hand, there's Madam Folly, who tries to get our attention and ask for our obedience to do foolish things. And Solomon is writing to his son and saying, be sure you listen to sweet sister wisdom. And wisdom is speaking in this particular passage. And here's what wisdom says. If only you had listened when I corrected you, I would have told you what's in my heart. I would have told you what I'm thinking. I called, but you refused to listen. I held out my hand, but you paid no attention. You did not follow my advice and did not listen when I corrected you. So I will laugh when you're in trouble. I will make fun when disaster strikes you. When disaster comes over you like a storm, when trouble strikes you like a whirlwind, when pain and trouble overwhelm you, then I will call to you, but then you will call to me, but I will not answer. You will look for me, but you will not find me. It's because you rejected knowledge and did not choose to respect the Lord. You did not accept my advice, and you rejected my correction. So you will get what you deserved. You will get what you planned for others. And so wisdom is saying, listen, and part of your listening will be receiving correction. Proverbs 3, verses 11 and 12. My child, don't reject the Lord's discipline, and don't be upset when he corrects you, for the Lord corrects those he loves, just as a father corrects a child in whom he delights. And so he compares God, our Father, with a good father on earth who will not let a child do everything he wants to do. I read a book recently that said if we let the children vote, we'd have ice cream and candy for breakfast every day. But we know better than that. And so we lead our children and guide and correct them in the right way. The next passage, Proverbs 5, verses 7 through 12. Here, Solomon is talking to his son about women. He said there are some women who are good women. We have that in Proverbs chapter 31, the ideal mother and wife. But then there are the others. Listen to what he says. Now, my sons, listen to me and don't ignore what I say. Stay away from such a woman. Don't even go near the door of her house, or you will give your riches to others, and the best years of your life will be given to someone cruel. Strangers will enjoy your wealth, and what you work so hard for will go to someone else. You will groan at the end of your life when your health is gone. Then you will say, I hated being told what to do. I would not listen to correction. That's important for leaders. As you've studied, I'm sure, in your classes on elders and deacons, there are qualities that a man needs to have to serve as an elder or deacon. Same thing is true as a preacher. But I often say in classes that I teach, you can be a bad elder with a good wife. You cannot be a good elder with a bad and uncooperative wife. And so it's good to listen to advice when you're thinking about who to get married to if you're not already married. And that's what Solomon was saying to his sons. Be sure and get the right woman. Don't go to the wrong one. Now, Proverbs 9, verses 7 to 9. Anyone who rebukes a mocker will get an insult in return. Anyone who corrects the wicked will get hurt. So, don't bother correcting mockers. They will only hate you. But correct the wise, and they will love you. Instruct the wise, and they will be even wiser. Teach the righteous, and they will learn even more. Some people said, well, I tell you what, when somebody tells me I did something wrong, I just tell them what I think about them, get them told off. Yeah, he said that's what a mocker will do. And if you correct the wicked, they'll get hurt. And so when I was rejecting criticism, thinking, well, I was thinking, why in the world would anybody want to correct somebody who works as hard as I do? I was a mocker, and I was wicked in that area of my life. But I'm not perfect, but I have improved. And so now when people correct me, I say, thank you, thank you, thank you. Roger talked to me a day or two ago. He said, did you know that blog post you sent out, that link didn't work? Thank you, Roger. Thank you, thank you. You're helping me. My daughter does that to me. She usually reads my blogs as soon as they come out, and she'll say, Daddy, check that word in this paragraph. And so the way I respond to criticism tells whether I'm a mocker and wicked or if I am wise and righteous. Proverbs 10:17. Whoever accepts correction is on the way to life. But whoever ignores correction will lead others away from life. Now, here's the theme passage of this lesson, Proverbs 12, verse 1. This is it, bottom line. Those who love knowledge want to be told when they are wrong. It is stupid to hate being corrected. Wow, that is powerful. Don't you wish the Bible were more complicated? See, a lot of people are worried about how complicated the Bible is. I think it was Mark Twain who said the complicated part of the Bible didn't worry him. It's what he understood and didn't want to do. And that's exactly what Solomon said. It is stupid to hate being corrected. Why? Proverbs 13:18. If you ignore criticism, you will end in poverty and disgrace. If you accept criticism, you will be honored. Proverbs 15, verse 10. Harsh discipline is for him who forsakes the way, and he who hates criticism will die. Another consequence, same chapter, 2 verses later.
Sorry. You ready for Proverbs 15:12?
15:12, thank you. A mocker resents correction. He will not consult the wise. Now, here's one that I like to stop and talk about. Proverbs 15:31 and 32. If you listen to constructive criticism, you will be at home among the wise. If you reject discipline, you only harm yourself. But if you listen to correction, you will grow in understanding. And a lot of people say, that's it, that's it, that's it. I don't mind constructive criticism. Now, if you want to give me constructive criticism, I'll listen, but I don't want it if it's not constructive criticism. And so we're asking people, we want you to really think hard, is this constructive or destructive? And with that kind of emotion, a lot of people say, you know what, probably we better not talk to Jerrie about that because he may think that's destructive criticism. Here's what I've done since my conversion to criticism, and we'll talk about that here in a few minutes. If you have something you'd like to say to me that you think I could improve, go ahead and tell me. Well, what if it's destructive criticism? I'll take responsibility for that. And so go ahead and tell me what you'd like to tell me. I do not do everything that people tell me I need to do differently. But my commitment is go ahead and tell me what you think, and I'll decide what I need to do with it. And so I will filter out what I think is constructive and what might not be helpful and what might even be destructive criticism. So go ahead and tell me. I'll listen. Proverbs 17:10, he keeps on that theme. A sensible person accepts criticism or accepts correction, but you can't beat sense into a fool. And so again, whether I'm foolish or wise, a lot of it has to do with how I deal with criticism. Let me tell you my story. I had been in Georgia for a few years, and I was still rejecting and deflecting criticism. We had a man from Atlanta, Georgia, who came to our building on Mondays, James Jones. He was a counselor. He helped people sift through their problems. He helped people with marriage problems, individual issues. And one of the privileges I had as the preacher is that I could set up an appointment with him and didn't have to pay him. He rented our library for 5 hours free counseling each month. One Sunday, I'd received some stinging criticism. I went into the secretary on Monday and I says, does James have any time available today? I'd like to talk to him. And she said, yeah, 2 o'clock. I said, I need to talk to him. I wanted James to do 2 things. Number one, I wanted him to agree that I was right and they were wrong. They shouldn't have said it. They were way off base what they said. And to me, that was very clear. Number two, I didn't think he would do it, but I thought it wouldn't cost anything to ask him. He often visited our congregation on Sundays or Wednesdays, and sometimes he'd teach classes. He knew a lot of the people. So I wanted him to, I was going to tell on these people and what they had done to me, and I wanted him to talk to them and say, you know, Jerrie Barber works really hard, and he's a good preacher, and he's sincere. And it really discourages him when people criticize him. So I think it would really be good if you just not criticize him anymore. So that was the 2 things I wanted from James that day. I went in and I told him my story. I told what these people had said about me. And I waited for his response. He was an unusual fellow. He is greatly responsible for the rest of my ministry and for the work that I've been doing for several years, working with different churches between preachers. And James did what he often did. He'd look at the floor, look back up, look at the floor, look back up. And finally he spoke. He said, did it ever occur to you that not everybody likes Jerrie Barber? And then I didn't say anything because that really never had occurred to me. I mean, you hadn't known me very long, but what about me would not anybody like? I didn't say anything. And so after a meaningful pause, he continued his observation. He says, everybody does not like Jerrie Barber. Everybody has not liked Jerrie Barber in the past. Everybody does not like Jerrie Barber today. Everybody will not like Jerrie Barber in the future. That's truth. That's reality. That's the way the world operates. You have two choices. Number one, you can let people know that you don't like criticism. You can communicate them, and you do communicate that verbally and non-verbally. And he said, if you'll communicate that real well, that you don't want criticism, not many people will criticize you until they get ready to fire you. Man, that shocked me. Thoughts went back to December 19, 1976 at 10:20 in the morning. Not that I keep records or anything. I had just taught a Bible class, and one of the elders said to me, Brother Jerry, would you step into the office just a minute? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, Brother Jerry, I think you ought to think about resigning today. Wow. I've been studying my sermon all week long, and I looked, and that wasn't anywhere in my notes, resigning today. Didn't have any idea people were that upset with me. One of the most painful things that's ever happened to me in my life. And so when he said, if you'll let people know that you don't want criticism, not many people will criticize you until they get ready to fire you. And I thought, man, I don't want that again. I'm anxious for number two. He said, number two, you can let people know that you are concerned about what they think and how they feel. And if you will communicate that to them over and over and over again, and then respond accordingly when they do criticize you, a few people will tell you what they think and feel. And sometimes it will really, really hurt. But you'll learn some things you'll never learn any other way. That Monday afternoon separates my ministry from before criticism and after criticism. Incidentally, that was a difficult several months from the time the elder told me I needed to resign until I found somewhere else to preach. I was angry, I was embarrassed, I was hurt. So it was clear. Oh, first thing I did after service that morning, we went into the worship, and the first song we sang is Anywhere is Home, which is pretty good right after you've been fired, because you don't know where home's going to be. Immediately, I went ahead and preached, and I went to the other elder. We only had two elders. I went to the other elder, and I said, Robert, when did you and this other elder decide to fire me? And he said, what are you talking about? I said, when did y'all make up your mind that you were going to tell me to resign? He said, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, that's not a good rule. As you probably learned or will learn in your leadership lessons, an elder as an individual has no authority. The eldership has authority. And so that's a no-no. You don't fire a preacher or do any other major surgery or major decision without consulting the rest of the eldership.
Could I make a point right there, Jerry?
Yes, sir.
So what we enter into here is the elders working together.
That's right.
And communicating with one another before they make any kind of decision that's major.
That's it.
And so I just wanted to bring that in there. I don't want to hinder your class, but
that's fine.
Leadership, good leadership, the team communicates with each other before they make any major decisions. And that was tragic that they didn't do that.
So I felt like a victim. I had been wronged. I was right. He was wrong. And he ought to be ashamed of himself. About 7.5 or 8 years later, I was out running one day. I run to try to stay in good health. I'm 79 years old and just got through running 5 miles barefooted this morning. So I'm in pretty good shape. But I also do some of my best Bible study and thinking while I'm running. And so I just got to thinking, why in the world would he do something like that? Because this was a good man. He was a gentleman, one of the best deacons I ever saw in my entire ministry of 62 years. He loved me, he loved my wife, he loved my kids. Why would he do that? Well, the reason he did it because there were some people in the church who were upset at some sermons I'd preached, and they came to him and just said, you know, we need to do something about Jerrie. We don't like what he's been preaching. And so he came and did what he really thought. Incidentally, I don't think this is in this series, but let me tell you, one of the most powerful Proverbs for me has been Proverbs 21, verse 2. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the heart. You know why people do what they do? They really think it's the best thing for them to do today. So I knew that. I knew he was a sincere man, good, gentle man. Why would he do that? Why wouldn't those people come and talk to me instead of telling? Oh, I said, I know why they wouldn't come talk to me, because I didn't want it. I didn't like criticism. And so I reflected on why I was fired on December 19, 1976. Number one is because I did not handle my anger very well. At that point during my ministry, when I got angry, what I would do is preach what I call an angry sermon. I'd get up and I'd tell people they was going to hell and holler and pound the pulpit, and do that about every 6 months. And that gets kind of heavy after so long a time. Number two, at that point in my ministry, I did not handle criticism very well. In fact, I didn't handle it at all. I deflected it and let people know I don't want it. And number three, I did not avail myself of some friends, especially some older people who could have given me some advice, because I didn't want to confess that people were criticizing me and that I felt frustrated and that I was overworked and all kinds of problems I had, because I thought if I tell them that, they'll think I'm weak and won't respect me anymore. So that's three things I did to get fired. What he did was wrong. That's not good leadership. But what I did was certainly not helpful at all. And so if I am continually feeling like a victim, I need to ask, what do I need to do differently? Or what do I need to do to protect myself? If I am driving in Nashville, Tennessee, and we have some areas of town that are very, very dangerous, if I happen to drive through one of those areas 3 times in a row and somebody shoots at me, what we call a drive-by shooting, I need to do one of two things. I need to stop going to that part of town, or I need to get bulletproof glass in my car, because I'm going to get killed if I don't do something. So I need to take responsibility for myself. And that discussion with James Jones that Monday afternoon helped me to change. And so now I tell people I accept, I invite, and I enjoy criticism. And so if you know anybody who knows there's something poison in my refrigerator, something ruined that I'm about to eat, and they tell me about it, they are not hurting me, they are helping me. Why would I want to get sick? Why would I want my children and grandchildren to get sick? And so anybody who thinks they know a way that I can improve, they're doing me a favor when they do that. Here's what I've done for the years after I had that session with James Jones. I took a night each year in the church where I was preaching to have what do you think about the preacher night? And here's what I did. After we closed our services, I would ask everybody to stay, and I'd say, I get to preach to you all year long. Tonight, I want you to tell me how I can improve. How can I be a better preacher? How can I be a better person? Tell me anything. This is not questions and answers. This is just you telling me how I can improve. I promise you I'll do three things. Number one, I will listen. Number two, I'll write it down. Number three, I'll think about it. I'm not promising I'll do everything everybody tells me to do. What I will do is I'll write it, I'll listen, I'll write it down, and I'll think about it. So that was my conversion to criticism. Let's go now to Proverbs 19:25.
Jerry, could I make a point real quick about
sir.
Proverbs 21:2? So I think most of us as preachers know that we make mistakes, that we could have probably approached a subject differently or preached a sermon a little differently or handled a situation better. We would say that to ourselves. My question might be, every man's way is right in his own eyes. Why do you think we have a hard time accepting criticism, even though we know we're not always right?
The reason I didn't want it is because I was scared to death.
Scared.
Yeah. And I was overworking. One of the things a preacher, elder, or any human being needs to do is to allot time for family and for rest. I went to a doctor when I was 37 years old, and I went ahead and prescribed my own disease and wanted him to tell me how much medicine to take. But when I went in, he listened to what was bothering me, and he said, how much sleep are you getting? And I said, about 3 to 5 hours a night. He said, okay, I think I can help you. He said, I want you to sleep for 8 hours a night for 30 days in a row and come back and talk to me. I said, I ain't got time to do that. He said, yeah, you have. You got as much time as the president of the United States, and you can allot that however you need to go. I said, well, my elders might not like that. He said, I'll talk to your elders. And of course, that wasn't a problem. And so I was tired. I was overworked due to my own choices. And somebody said, when we evaluate someone else's actions, we do it on what they do. When we evaluate our actions, we do it on what we intended to do. And what Proverbs 21:2 verse says, every way of a man is right in his own eyes. And that's true regardless of the seriousness of the crime. People who go in and shoot other people think they had a reason they need to be shot. That's not right.
I appreciate you addressing that.
Yep. Okay, I believe we're ready for.
You said Proverbs 19 something.
1925. If you punish a mocker, the simple-minded will learn a lesson. If you correct the wise, they will be all the wiser. Listen to this one, Proverbs 26, verse 2. Curses do not harm someone who is innocent. They are like sparrows or swallows that fly around and never land. Curses do not harm someone who is innocent. They're just like these little birds are just flitting. They'll land and they go somewhere else, land, go somewhere. They're not going to stick. The only way that I can get upset at somebody criticizing me is if I feel like they may be right. So I have the guilt, and that really upsets me, and I don't want to expose that bad part of me. But if someone comes up and tells me and says, Jerry, you say you like criticism? Well, I'm going to tell you what I think. I don't think any preacher ought to drive a car that is purple with yellow polka dots on it. You think I'm going to get upset at that? No, my car is black. I'm comfortable with that. I know that. And anybody who accuses me of driving a car that is purple with yellow polka dots, there's something wrong with them. And I don't need to get upset about it. So curses will not harm someone who is innocent. They're like sparrows or swallows. Somebody said, live a good enough life that people won't believe your critics. And so there's where the assurance is in living a good life.
Would you repeat that? That was a good statement.
False criticism won't hurt a person of integrity.
No, the one you said about people not believing the critics.
Oh, yeah. Somebody said that we should live good enough that they won't believe our critics. Now, this one's powerful. Proverbs 27, 5, 6, and 17. Open rebuke is better than love carefully concealed. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. As iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpens the countenance of his friend. Open rebuke is better than love carefully concealed? Yeah. If somebody openly rebukes you and says, I don't like this, and I don't accept this, what do you know? You know where we stand. You know what he likes, what he doesn't like. That's better than love carefully concealed. What if somebody says, I really love Jerry Barber, I respect him, but he never says anything about it? When I read this, I think of a church where I preached longer than any other church in my ministry. Barry's Chapel, Church of Christ in Franklin, Tennessee. I was there for 14 years. There was a lady there that I got acquainted with really before I came. I was preached a time or two before I came as their preacher. And for 11 years, I reflected on it. That lady never criticized me. She never complimented me. She didn't say, I don't like you, but neither did she say, that was a good sermon. Jerry, I appreciate the work that you put. And so I didn't know where I stood with her. Now, some other people said, I didn't like this too well. I had one lady, I said something before I became the preacher there, and she told me, said, I didn't like that too well. Well, I know where we stand. I know what she didn't like. Open rebuke is better than love carefully concealed. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. Why in the world would a friend wound you? The only time is when it would help you. For years after I came to Nashville, my family doctor was Dr. John Thompson. He and I grew up together in Centerville, Tennessee, went to the same school. And so it was just like old friends every time we'd get together. Let's suppose that I come in one day and I've got a pain in my side, and Dr. Thompson does some tests, and he says, Jerry, you have appendicitis, and it's early in the stages of being gangrene. What really we need to do is cut a hole in your side and take that appendix out. But we're such good friends, I just really hate to take a knife and cut a hole in your side. No. Hey, if that's what we need, cut a hole in my side. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. Friends will wound us if that's something that will help us. I like one definition of a leader I've heard. A leader is someone who increases toleration for pain in himself and others. We cannot preach on what we think people will like and compliment us and avoid topics that they won't like and may criticize us. And so, faithful are the wounds of a friend. Iron sharpens iron. Does iron always sharpen iron? Not always. My father was a carpenter, and sometimes we would be pouring a short run of concrete, and he would put reinforcing rods, about 1/4 of an inch. He'd put reinforcing rods in there, and he'd get long pieces, and they need to be cut up into appropriate lengths. A time or two, when he left his hacksaw at home, I saw him take an axe and put it in a stump and take a reinforcing rod, and he'd start beating that reinforcing rod on the edge of that axe. What do you think it did for the axe? It dulled it. Iron sharpens iron when it is pointed in the right direction to knock off the rough edges. So a good friend, iron will sharpen iron. So as a man sharpens the countenance of his friends. And so good critics are people who knock off the rough edges. When Roger calls and said, "You misspelled a word, this link doesn't work. Have you thought about this?" He is being my friend. He is sharpening me. And I say, "Thank you. You're going to make me look smarter tomorrow than I am because I didn't catch that." Proverbs 29, verse 1. If you get more stubborn every time you are corrected, one day you will be crushed and never recover. That's it. Proverbs 29:11. A fool always loses his temper, but a wise man holds it back. So how am I going to respond to correction? If I get angry, that's foolish. A wise man thinks. Nothing wrong with being angry. Mark 3:5, Jesus looked around in anger, being grieved because of the hardness of their hearts. Ephesians 4:26, be angry, do not sin. Don't let the sun go down on your wrath. What I need to do is between the time that I start feeling that, I need to put some space between my reaction time. And hopefully you've got a mustard seed today that will help you do that. That's the meat. Let's get the bottom slice of bread and we'll be finished. The bottom slice comes from Ecclesiastes verses 2-6. It is better to go to a funeral than to a party. We all must die, and everyone living should think about this. Sorrow is better than laughter, and sadness has a good influence on you. A wise person thinks about death, but a fool thinks only about having a good time. It is better to be criticized by a wise person than to be praised by a fool. The laughter of fools is like the crackling of thorns in a cooking fire. Both are useless.
What was that reference again, Jerry? Ecclesiastes what?
7 verses 2-6.
Thank you.
That simply says, do I base my preaching and my teaching and my actions on what I think people will like and what's fun and that brings no discomfort? If it is, that's foolish. Our job, our task in this life is not to feel good, but to do right. Jesus said in Luke 9:23, if anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. Taking up a cross is not for recreation and for having fun. It is painful. And so criticism often is painful, but it's good.
Were you finished?
I am finished.
We really appreciate your time with this. And what we will do is post these scriptures these additional scriptures, we'll put them in the comment description section on the video on YouTube. You have shared a lot of great things with us today. And I'm thinking about just kind of summing up what you said. We should not be afraid of criticism unless we don't want to change.
Okay.
And if I don't want to change, then there's something wrong with me, because you brought up several scriptures. The last one, taking up a cross daily is forcing me to conform to the ways of the Lord and not my ways. And that's a lifetime effort. And I was thinking about how you grew over the years in learning to accept criticism, and you learn to accept it. And probably I would guess that along the way you still struggle with it some, but you process it over time and you learn how to better deal with it. It's not you don't learn it all at one time.
Right. And let me say this, there is a follow-up lesson to this, and it's called I love criticism, but not too much. And it is when there is malicious criticism. Sometimes there are evil people who get fixated on a good person, and they are just vicious in their criticism. And so there's a limit to it. And so Roger may put a link where you can watch that, or we'd like to do another session sometime. I'd be glad to talk about that.
Let me ask you one thing before we wind up the lesson today. So someone comes to us as we're trying real hard to accept criticism and better ourselves. How do you deal with a person who comes at you harshly, and even though what they're saying may be right, you can tell they're angry and they're coming at you harshly? How would you respond to that to maybe help them? Because what they're saying may be true, but the way they approach it might work with me, but it might not work with other people.
Good question. First of all, I like to remember Proverbs 21, verse 2. The reason they're doing what they're doing today and the way they're doing it, because they really believe this is the best thing for them to do today. And so what I want to do is to say, thank you. I really appreciate you thinking enough about me that you could tell me a way you think I could improve. And it sounds like you're disappointed in me and you disagree with me, whatever it is. Let me ask you this. Have there been other times and maybe other subjects where I've disappointed you? Let me hear that. And so a lot of times I carry 3 by 5 cards in my pocket. I say, let's just write those down, and I'll be glad to talk with you about it. I have a rule. I like to listen a person to death. I want a person to get so tired of talking that they say, Jerry, I've talked. Would you please talk a while? Because if I interrupt them, see, what escalates conflict is a person maybe harshly criticizes me. Well, that irritates me. And so that I think they shouldn't have done that. And so I respond to them and I figure out why they did it. And I criticize them for doing it and the reason they did it. And then they hear that and they escalate it more. And that gets a big conflict going. It takes 2 to tango. It takes 2 to have a good fuss. So what I would do is what I try to do every time is to thank a person for sharing their thoughts and feelings. Incidentally, Roger, one of the things that I've done, it took me 50 years of preaching, but I have an agreement when I go to a church, and one of my agreements is Jerry Barber will not accept, if anyone has all criticism of Jerry Barber goes directly to Jerry Barber and he will welcome it. Jerry Barber does not accept anonymous criticism. And so a lot of times we get anonymous criticism. They'll say, Jerry, a lot of people are upset. Did you know a lot of people are upset because that sermon you preached? Well, who are they? Well, I can't tell you. It's confidential. Well, I can't listen to that. I don't accept anonymous criticism. Tell them, talk to me. I'll be glad to listen. And so that cuts out, in my ministry, that would cut out a large percentage of the criticism that I used to get before I had that agreement. A lot of people are upset. I heard somebody say, few people have told me this. Okay, tell them come talk to me. That's Matthew 18:16.
I'll leave with this, going back to the someone coming to you angry, is Proverbs 15:1. A soft answer turns away wrath. And so, and I think it's good if they come at you hard like that, don't respond harshly. Think about it, pray about it, process what went on. And then if there's a follow-up discussion needed, then you're in a better frame of mind to deal with it.
That's it.
I
Thank
really appreciate your time today, and we will end this lesson today with a prayer, and then we will post it on YouTube later. Let us pray. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for the lesson today. We thank you for the wonderful words from Psalms and Proverbs and Ecclesiastes and the things you've given to us by inspiration. We thank you for Jerrie and his time and his experience in sharing these words of wisdom from his life. May we all be better at dealing with criticism and also be the right kind of critics when we need to. Thank you for Jesus, and bless us as we seek to serve you daily. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.